Hello, everybody. I am joined with Monia Ali, and she is an expert on fandom, which is kind of a new topic completely. So I don't know how many experts there really are.
There's probably a lot of experts in fandom, but they don't want to advertise it. Like, there's people everywhere, but a lot of them are closeted fans.
Well, so they are fans, but they don't study fans.
Well, they're just like, they wouldn't talk to other people about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a
Oh.
secret identity. And I never did that because I was like, I don't care. People can know that I do all these things. It's fine. But so if there's experts out there.
But you're an expert in fandom. Do you follow any particular groups, any particular people? Are you also a fan, or are you just looking at the culture, trying to figure out what's going on?
So I've been in fandom since I was really young, and I was a stan even. I do differentiate between stans and fans
What's the
because
difference? What's the difference?
so the way I see it is the stans are like the clergy and the fans are just like the people that come to visit, because there's this whole infrastructure that you build with fandoms where there has to be update accounts, there has to be like websites and then they have to recruit people across the world so that every time zone is covered. Like there's a lot of details and a lot of activity, and regular fans usually aren't the ones that are spending 10 hours on an update account or stalking or hacking into stuff. um, so yeah, I was in the One Direction fandom, and it was a horrible experience, and that made me want to start researching, basically, just to sort of make sense
What
of what happened.
happened? What happened there?
Well, um, it's so I'm not sure if One Direction fandom is the one that sort of started the insane fandoms, but I do know that sort of the things that were happening have spread to K-pop. So I know that it is sort of like spreading. But basically they're all conspiracists in the way that, like, when you're a stan, you like, I don't think you would say that you worship them, but that is essentially what happens. Like you just can't handle any bad things, and when people say bad things or something, you start feeling like personally hurt, and you're like, oh my god, I can't. Why would this happen? So the problem with One Direction is that there were five guys, and then each of them could have like three separate fan groups that have their own theories about what's going on, and all of these groups fight.
Really?
Yes. Yes, they will fight. They will fight. They will fight. And so I'm fine with saying I was delusional because I was manipulated and stuff. I call it like a cultic experience because there was a lot of manipulation behind the scenes that I learned later, which is fun. But what happened was a lot of us thought that the band was coming back, and a lot of us were like, but no, Harry's a cool guy. He wouldn't do that. And then as soon as the first commercial, like as soon as a commercial dropped for his first album, the entire fandom was like, you have to buy this album or get the fuck out. Like if you don't do this, then you're cunt. Like we called it cuntgate because they were just like going to people and being like, how dare you say that you're upset about this? Like you have to buy this album. They were basically like, if you don't buy it, then you're letting down every single, like this is actually a quote, you're letting down every single LGBT artist that's out there.
Really? So they're
Yes.
conflating LGBT with them because
Well, for
some
Harry specifically, they believe he's closeted, and there's right now I hope it's not actually a campaign, but a lot of his fans are currently trending free Harry because they believe he's being held hostage like Britney was.
Oh.
Because he's not greedy, he's not greedy. He doesn't like, what are you guys doing? Like he's family with his managers. He co-owns his management company. Like literally he is the most in control of everything, but they're like, no, he's being abused and he's being, treated badly. We have to free him. People thought the Britney fans were crazy. And it's like, yeah, but you are though. Like you've yeah.
So he's not feeding into this delusion
He
at all.
is.
He is.
He is. Yeah. All of them do
ignorant.
it. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, that's why I started researching, right? Because when I'm trying to think of how to explain this in a way that sort of makes sense. So one of the big things that happened is, so I was just poking around the fandom and I was like, oh, these people are crazy. I've been warned about them, because that is how insane the fans were, that you're in other fandoms and they're like, oh, don't go into One Direction. Like, those fans are crazy. Like, don't do it. And I was just like poking around. And one of the things I discovered was that, and this was their last tour, their last worldwide tour, which was 2015. People were like, oh, we're getting messages from the Rainbow Bears. And I was like, what is happening over here? What? You start poking around and you're like, oh, wait, there are 2 Rainbow Bears that are on the stage at like all of the shows, and they're dressed up in different outfits. And there's like entire tableaus set up for like different ones for each show. And then the Bears got a Twitter account that was like validated and would like communicate with fans and sort of, I mean, it's hard for me to say drop hints, because I don't know what the purpose was beyond maybe keeping people engaged in the band as a group and thinking that it was going to go on, because the last tweets were like, we'll be back soon or something like that.
It's just to capture your attention, to keep you guys engaged
hooked.
The whole time. Hooked. Yeah. I mean, that's what entertainment is.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so I started looking into, obviously, all the past boy band history and like behind the scenes and stuff like that, because I was like, but are we imagining things? And then you start looking, you're like, oh no, they've been doing stuff like this for ages. Like, not specifically teddy bears. That's a new one, I think. But like New Kids on the Block would involve their sisters and their moms. They were part of the strategy. They would go do mall spots. And that's a thing now as well, right? Like family members even have fans and update accounts and stuff like that. Yeah,
I've noticed that it gets bigger and bigger, and to be in a universe, you have to kind of know so many things. So it's hard for just an observer to come in and be like, you know what, I kind of like so-and-so. People pile on you because they're like, well, you don't know enough. You know, you just like this song. It doesn't mean that you're in this group. And I've just been noticing all these little bubbles, these little social bubbles popping up, and it goes so deep within the bubble that I feel people get lost in this information wherever they are. I wasn't aware of One Direction at all. I know they exist, but I didn't know that it was a problem.
Oh, I wish I never wandered in there. But yeah, it's so and then I got exiled. So like my Substack like name is like Exiled Fan, because I legitimately was exiled from the fandom.
What did they say to you? What's the process of exiling someone? Was it formal?
I didn't. So let me try to explain it. So it's on Tumblr. It's Tumblr. And I have never had, I mean, I've been in fandom since forever, but I was never like a big blog. And I never really tried to do that. Like, I'm just like minding my own business and making friends. So I just posted that I was pretty disappointed in Harry Styles' when he was doing the launch. They focused a lot on 70s imagery because they were trying to go for the older male audience, like they did Rolling Stone, and lots of references to Prince. This is also what I didn't like about it, is like, he's the new Prince, he's the new Michael Jackson, he's the new Prince, look, he released Sign of the Times at the anniversary of Sign of the Times by Prince. Oh my god, he's basically a Prince copy, brilliant. And I'm just like, okay, can we just hear the music?
Yeah.
And then like make up our minds. But no, he's Bowie, he's Prince, he's, you know, he's a genius, yada yada yada. And I was like, well, that's annoying. And then there were a lot of like, it leaned heavily into the 70s idea of like, you know, sex, young girls and stuff like that. So one song had a line like referred to hard candy, and I was like, that makes me uncomfortable because I don't like it. And you know, because it means it's like an old reference to about like young prepubescent girls, basically. And that's what the movie Hard Candy is about. If people want to see something really disturbing, I mean, it's great, but it is very visceral, like that movie. So I was just writing about that. I was like, I don't like this term because it means this and yada yada. And someone who was a big fan, I guess, saw this and took it as like a real, like completely unacceptable, I guess, because she made like a whole post that was everyone who didn't like the lyrics were because of that or had a problem with the PR was a sick fucko, because if you see a problem there, the problem is you because you're projecting the problem yourself. Yeah. And then it was like a whole thing about like, we need to respect him, blah, blah, blah. Anyone who says anything to do with this, I'll block you immediately. If I ever see this person on my dash, I'll block you guys immediately. Like very like systemic of like, you can never, like if you ever interact with these people, I'm going to block all of you. And I was like, but people know she's a drama queen, right? Like people know that. She's super dramatic. She does this stuff all the time. So I wasn't even that bothered at first. And then I was just like poking around being like, oh, Niall Horan is performing. I'm like, oh, that's so nice. I want to, I want to reblog some of those GIFs. And I'm like, wait, I can't do that. That's weird. Oh, I'll try the next set. Why is it telling me I can't reblog things? And then I'm starting to look around and basically all of the One Direction accounts had blocked me. So yeah. So so that's what I mean when I say exiled. Yeah, when I say exiled, like I mean like they literally were like, you need to get the fuck out. And so a bunch of us that were treated that way still stayed because we were like, but we want to know what's happening, and also we care about the other members, right? And we're like, we want to see what's going to happen. And I was particularly invested in Louis Tomlinson, so I was like, well, why don't I just like hang out over here? But they were like, they were not happy that we didn't leave, so they escalated. The accusations. So from we don't like these lyrics, it became these people said Harry was a pedophile.
What?
So yeah. And I'm just like, how is that even remotely anything close to anything that we've ever like?
Well, you say it in one of your Substack. You talk about the road to fandom, and you point out that regular fans are not these people, because what you're describing are people who are antisocial. I don't know another way to say it, but that's not how you would talk to a person. You're speaking to them in real life. You just say, oh, I disagree, or can you explain yourself? Or even if they thought you were completely wrong, you just say, oh, I don't think that's what he meant, and then move on. Like most people in most interactions, you're like, well, that's not exactly, you're not mirroring me exactly, but that's okay, and we'll move on. And then desserts will come, and then it's fine. What you're describing is an antisocial person.
Yeah, and I mean, I later found out that she was one of the people. She also like flounced later, and she's exclusively a Harry fan now, and she thinks all the other ones are garbage and they never had talent. Like she went from they're all amazing, he would never let them down, he loves equality, like they're all equal, and now she's like, he's the superior person of all time. And got really angry, and I'm like, okay, cool, go have fun in that corner. But she was part of. There was like a number of big blogs that sort of created a secret blog where they decided how to steer the conversation in fandom, basically, because you would get anonymous messages and they say, if we ever get a message that touches on this topic, this is how we agree to respond. This is how we agree to respond if this happens. If people have doubts, you have to make sure to be like, why would you ever have doubts about this? He's an amazing person. Like, so all of this stuff was being fed to us continuously, just from multiple places, right? I think that's the hardest thing to understand, is that fandom in itself is a community of people, and those people will also like.
That's manipulation. I mean, it's a community, but what you're talking about is outside.
That's why I call it cultic.
It's cultic, yeah, but most communities, they're not going to organize for the narrative like that. They'll just let it come up. Do you know what I mean? They'll let it come up in conversation. And what they're doing is saying that these are regular conversations, that these things came up organically, but they had already crafted before. which is so devious. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm here smiling because I'm like, oh my God, so devious. I admire devious things. Like, you thought about that? Like, I never even put it in my head that you would think about that or do any of that or put the effort in. But when you're talking, I'm
Oh
like,
my God, putting the effort in. Yeah, no, some of the craziest things that I heard as well, because the blogs, this is part of the reason why you got so into it as well, or me personally. And I do call it like, I call it like fan conversion, which I did read in a book, but I feel like it really nails what happens, because that conversion moment is like a moment that you feel, right? And you're just like, oh my God. But so I heard like, so people would be like, oh, someone is going to pop up in the UK suit. So they seem to have like weird insider knowledge of things that would happen. And I was like, this is so crazy. Like, they know everything so well, they can predict things. What I later found out is that they were actually, and still are, tracking flights.
they're
like
tracking
flights. Yeah.
So they know what flight One Direction got on?
Yeah. So they would know. So they would know, like, oh, so you only need to have access to a travel agent. They all use the same system, because this is apparently how Scientology does it. I'm like, oh, you have something in common with Scientologists. This is so great.
Well, this seems to be focused direction, which people, they feel they're powerless. People at home, they feel they're powerless all the time. But when you see this, you see what Scientology did or does. You just see that people who are willing to spend that time and focus their attention on one thing can accomplish so much, because it didn't take any money. These people aren't getting paid, are they?
No, that's the thing. And industry calls them customer evangelists. Yeah, so they know.
And it is like an evangelism.
Yes. And they've been very open about that as well, that that's what they want. And they want people to fall in love with their brands. They want to have that emotional attachment. There's even someone, was it for a PR firm? It was one of, like, either PR or marketing firm in LA. And she was writing about how, regular spirituality is down. So we have to see how our properties can fill that void, basically. And I'm like, so you guys are just being honest that you literally want people to worship your brands and keep spending. Because
they want you to keep spending. They don't care. They don't care. And a lot of people think that it's something nefarious, but like a lot of people out here, they don't care. I was reading through, I forget what it was, but you said that Tumblr, I believe, had gotten infiltrated by marketing people.
Yeah.
And you felt betrayed by that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's stupid. Because that's the thing. There's a feeling of Tumblr being private. It isn't private in any way whatsoever. But because people are talking about fanish stuff, you're kind of like, why would anyone care about what we're doing over here? And then you find out that actually they have been there, and they have been, I don't know, you're just like, oh, nothing I said, like, they're all aware of what we're saying, right? There's like a feedback. And I think fans just haven't understood yet that there is no fourth wall anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if it was back in the day, in the 2000s, we would be on LiveJournal, and LiveJournal would be locked, basically. We would presumably be friends locked, as it was called, so that you would have to be part of the community to see it. But now you don't have to do that. So
I've worked at the other side of it for movie marketing. I can't say which movies or whatever, but honestly, it's a gig. Stuff here is expensive. You get called, and you're happy to get called, and you sit in a room and you think of all the ways that you can take people's attention for this movie. And you don't care if the movie's any good. You don't know anything about the movie. Yeah. Like, some of the suggestions are completely inappropriate. Some things that we obviously, because we've signed NDAs, but also because
I can mention inappropriate things because I've done a lot of research, and you don't have to say anything, but yes, keep talking, keep saying.
It's so unfeeling. It's so a matter of, okay, this movie's PR needs, or this movie's PR budget is this much, and we need ideas. We need you guys to come up with things, and it's 5 people in a room who need this job to pay rent just this month. It's maybe not for next month. And so they got to push out some of these things, and they're not thinking, I'm betraying this person. It's nothing like that. It's just so that the movie can make money. And if the movie makes money, they'll hire that PR firm, or they'll hire that copyright firm again, that post house, whatever. They'll hire them again because they did a good job.
Yeah.
And that's it. And nobody cares. Like it's insane to me how much the fans really care. And it's good to me to get a perspective on that, because in Hollywood, the people who are marketing these movies, I only know about movies. I don't know about shows, but I'm assuming it's the same for shows. They do not care. They might not even like the show. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's very, so a few things that I've seen and are linkable, like they're easily sourceable online, is Ex Machina, the movie for that. They created a fake dating profile for the girl. So like,
that's wrong.
They literally created a fake dating profile and were like having discussions and then being like, check out Ex Machina. Oh, you think she's hot? Well, you can watch her in this movie, basically. Yeah, I know. I feel bad for the men who were, who fell for that. But that's definitely one of the things where I'm like, why would you think people are going to want to watch a movie after they've been tricked?
No, and I feel that the people that I was in a room with may have had antisocial tendencies as well. I've had to put a stop to things, and I'm like, you think that's a good idea? Do you think that's appropriate to do? And they're like, wait a minute. No, you're right.
Yeah, no, there is no, or they just really want to get to everyone. There's a quote that I can, so I'm right now looking at marketing specifically, and there's this man who was the co-founder of a watchdog group about marketing and promotion. And he wrote a letter to the ad agencies saying, do you recognize any place to be off limits to advertising? In your view, where should your industry draw the line? No response.
There's no line anymore, because
no, there's no line.
It's in your head. There is no line. Everyone's competing for your attention. There's so many projects out now, so many shows, so much content. The creators need fans. They need them badly, and they will use any insidious method to infiltrate. And it's wrong, but it's capitalism. It's attention capitalism. I don't know what you call that, but it's a brave new world. I feel that this is the past 5 years, the past 5-10 years.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the reason One Direction specifically took off like it did and became one of those social media curses is because they were right at the start of when Twitter started, and they all had Twitter, and they were on a reality show. So everyone from like across the world could follow them on Twitter, and that created like this big thing. And obviously they were young and not famous and not media trained, so they would just tweet, random things. And then fans started to use trending hashtags to like communicate. So if they get it to trend high enough, like it's like, okay, they're gonna see it, so they know that we're like celebrating how nice your feet look today. I don't know. It could really be that. Whatever, like, that minute.
Now, you said something interesting earlier about how it's kind of replacing religion, that people, they don't really have a belief system anymore that's bigger than themselves or bigger than other humans. And so they're grasping to these individuals. They're looking to people. Why do you think they pick the people that they pick? Is it something they see in themselves, or what? I'm confused. Why did you pick One Direction? Do you love their music?
I like it fine, but I didn't. I've joined, like I was in emo fandom. They called it Fandom. And I did not like the music at all when I joined that fandom. I got myself to like it, but I didn't like it at first. So it's hard to explain. The way I see it is you have to get, well, some people will just be like low grade fans and then slowly like find a community and then slowly become more, engulfed. But in my case, I do believe it was this like weird, what is it that it's called? It's sort of like, there's a psychologist who talks about this all the time. His name is Yuval Laor. And he talks about how you have these set points in your head. So like if something, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. So he calls it like, if you experience something miraculous, which could be anything that's like out of the ordinary, you can experience this like awe feeling. And that awe feeling can make you jump onto a different belief. It can make you, it's like also like you can fall in love with your wife that way, and then you have that feeling for someone else, and now you're cheating, and now the marriage is over. So it could be with anything. And he explains it. I'm just taking his story now, but I'm giving him credit. But he talks about it as in like, imagine if you're looking at a lake and then suddenly you see someone walking on the water. And you could ask 4 different people and they were all going to say this proves something different, because they each have different, like the Christian will be like, oh my God, Jesus is back. Or someone else is like, this means the lizard people are real because I heard about the man that would walk over water. Like it'll fit into whatever you have in your head.
Frame of reference, yeah.
Yeah, and when I think the problem is when you experience that awe, because it is a feeling, you get the feeling of knowledge. Do you know what it's like, I can't think of explaining it in any other way. Like when you know something, but you know it.
Gnosis.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, that's like the Christian gnosis of knowing God, but it's not.
No, exactly. It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It mimics the feeling of gnosis.
Yeah. I think the study is called like noetics, the scientific study of it, but it's still very advanced for me. Like when I read the details, I'm like, oh my God, this is too sciencey for me. I get the basic, but I know that feeling because like when I say I believe the band was going to stay together, I mean like I knew it. I thought people were being so ridiculous, and I was like, oh my God, the media is so dumb. We're on to you. No. And that was just because with like, for example, flight tracking. So these people that were saying, no, the band is doing XYZ, were always right about other things. You know what I mean? So it's like, they've proven that they are right about stuff, but actually by having access to illegal information, not by any other, deduction or anything like that. It really is just like, but they're hiding it. So for them, it's like, yeah, I'm in the know.
So they crafted the narrative, and we see narratives crafted all over the place. And we're seeing it with social media, and we're seeing how to tell a story. Humans love stories more than they love facts. It's very rare to find a human that likes facts more than stories.
Yeah. I mean, it's also that thing where like, and you see this on Twitter, I believe, when you have, I'm sure I've done it as well because I too can be stubborn, but like people will believe certain things and they'll be like, I don't want to read this thing that goes against it because XYZ. And for them, they're like, this is a perfectly reasonable reason because I already know this and I don't want to read this thing by this person who, I don't know, whatever, like, or from this magazine, or they'll read it and they'll be super angry because it's so offensive because they read it as an attack. Because what is it? It's like it has to do with your emotional gauging of reading, basically. That can happen that you're just like, this isn't actually offensive, but when you read it, you feel like, oh my God, someone is coming at me.
So they're insecure about something and that they need to hold on to this reality that they have in their head. Is that what the article might mess up? Is their reality?
Yeah. And I think so like part of the reason why I stayed past this is so I wanted to help be there for this other guy's career. And this is when we realized like, oh, actually fans have like zero power because we can't actually do anything if the label isn't on board. No. And that's when you realize you're like, oh my God, we are powerless. Like, we thought we could help, but now we're actually just stuck watching the mistreatment. Because, I mean, that's always what happens with bands.
You help sell the records. No,
well,
I'm serious. That's what you're there for. You're there to help sell the records. That's it. Like, you're there to help capitalism. I forget where I was reading it, your thing. I actually have to print it out so I can write on it, because otherwise, otherwise I'm just gonna get lost in the screen. But you're writing about how fans get mad. Don't kill your gays, staff writers. They get mad and they try to influence the plot of these shows. And I'm here like, no. You don't influence the plot of the shows. You help sell the shows. Like, could you imagine if a fan 600 years ago was trying to tell Shakespeare, like, no, Hamlet's a cool guy. Don't do him like this. Like, what? What are you talking about? Hamlet, he got to die.
I mean, you say that as if there weren't Hamlet fanboys that were possibly writing fan fiction at the time.
I mean, maybe there was, but like in the story, he has to go.
Yeah.
Like,
but you can just live in the alternative universe. This is what fandom does as well, and is that you will have the canon, which is more often something you see with like TV shows or movies. Like, not so much reality, but like fans of real people will also be like, this is canon because it actually happened. And then you have fanon, which is the fan canon. Okay. And you can sort of be like, well, canon isn't real for me. So like, whatever, past season 5, I pretend like that doesn't exist. So to them, like, the show ends here and everything is like that. And then they spin off from there. And it becomes harder and harder when all of the properties keep coming up, as now with like Marvel just like taking over everything. I'm getting worried that fandom is being folded in so well into this marketing group that there's like not going to be any actual fandom left, because fandom is not about making money. It is not about making your, fan object rich, which is what stans do. They do believe that. They believe they need to get the number ones. They need to get the praise, and like, it's very important. They will celebrate, and it's really weird because I'll be like, I remember a couple years ago, I think it was Taylor Swift's Reputation tour, and I was following a few accounts because I was like, let's see what the Swifties are up to. And she had hit some sort of record for the most money grossed at some particular arena, and they were like celebrating. And I was like, but that's because your ticket prices were high. Like, that's it. Your ticket prices were high. She made a lot of money. So you're celebrating that you were gouged and you had to pay $900 for a snake pit ticket. Like,
that's fantastic manipulation. Like, whoever's doing that and convincing people that these virtual coins are what matter, and that the real money that these people make means absolutely nothing, and their real time means nothing. This is well done. Like, the experts in this field of marketing, of social psychology, of psychology, they're obviously, I don't want to say predator and prey, but they are the predator because they have a goal. They have a monetary goal. They have something that they're seeking to get out of the fandom.
Yes. And I will say that I am perfectly fine with calling them predatory, because I only just discovered this past weekend that, so obviously Columbine happened, and that was horrible. And Bill Clinton was like, we need to look into what are movies doing? What is gaming doing? What caused this? And I feel like I had heard about that, but then I never heard any follow-up to it. So there was a report that looked into how the film industry, the music industry, and the gaming industry was promoting their like violent products. And it turned out that R-rated movies that were like violent movies, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and stuff like that, were tested to teenagers and people as young as 9. So I'm like, that is predatory. I'm like, that's insane. And when it was like uncovered, like all the senator people that were talking were just like, what is happening? What were you guys doing? You know that this is rated R. Why are you then going to 12-year-olds and being like, help us think of plot stories for I Know What You Did Last Summer too?
That's inappropriate.
Yeah, but their reasoning,
that's inappropriate.
Yeah, no, it's completely inappropriate. And their reasoning was, well, the kids see it anyway, basically, so we should know what they think. And it's like, no, of course they're gonna try to access this content, but your job is not to make that easier. Your job is not to just hand it over. And apparently this was also because teenagers spent the most money on movies. They would go and see them repeatedly, you know, back in the day when
people left the house.
Yeah. So that was why they did it, I guess. And I'm like, but that's not even okay.
Well, they're not thinking I'm going to mess up society. They're thinking I need to pay my mortgage, which is unfortunate because I hope we're coming to the other end of it. People are saying millennials are more community oriented, but asking that person, that marketing house, to not do their best job is having them leave money on the table. And perhaps the studio goes with a different marketing house next time. A marketing house that would do that.
Yeah.
Now, not every marketing house will. Sometimes you get a marketing house that has just better ideas and better people, and they don't have to go that low.
Yeah.
But, you know, if the studio's mad and they're going to go to this guy next time, then, you know, people get desperate. Maybe it's desperation.
It's desperation. And I think also keeping up with what other people are doing. They'll, it seems like, they'll be like, oh, well, these people are targeting them, but we need to get them too, so we should do it as well. That's also partially why I was like, okay, I'll start writing about this, because at first I felt like it was kind of just like, and you know, like it was a horrible experience for me, but I was like, yeah, but maybe it was just me being weird, like things happened. And then I started seeing that these cycles are repeated.
They're repeated
all over fandom. Yeah. And I was like, oh my
groups.
God. Yeah. I mean, and I was like, okay. Yeah.
It resembles a cult. It resembles a religion. I mean, these techniques that have worked in the past are working now, and we're learning so much more so quickly.
Yeah.
And I know that's a messed up way to look at it, but to have all the evidence there in front of you.
Yeah.
To not have to go through and research and ask questions, but instead to have everyone have written exactly how they feel.
Yes.
And so that any researcher can then go and look at it, and it doesn't matter what his intentions are. There's going to be some honest social psychology, sociology, these kind of researchers that are going there for their dissertation. But then they're going to get some people who are going there to be like, how do we market this movie? What's the best way we can do? And it's unfortunate, but just because these people are more intellectually curious and higher minded, it doesn't mean they're any smarter than these people. Like, as far as what works right now, like they might be of the same intelligence, both groups, the academics versus the people working.
Yeah.
Which is actually scary, because you see these people working who don't have the morals an academic would.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's all out there.
Yeah. It's all out there. There's people, and I think it's out there to the point where so I found that there are, well, I don't know if they're still around now, but a couple of years ago, there were still a fan group of X-Files fans who were fans of X-Files, but also believed that Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny were secretly together. And for them, it's like hints everywhere. She wore the dress, like that's the dress. Like, we know that this dress is associated with him. And it's like, do you, or did she just put on a dress?
Yeah.
But you're seeing all these patterns because you're watching everything all the time. I think it's impossible not to start picking up patterns.
Yeah.
And they're probably not going to mean anything because patterns are everywhere, but our dumb human brains go like, oh, what's that? Oh, I know what's coming. And yeah, it's
so what are fans, the fandom, people who care more, what are they getting out of these shows? Why are they putting so much effort into these shows instead of like their family or their relationship? Are they getting companionship? You said you didn't even like the songs. Now
Yeah.
I'm super confused.
I know. It's I mean, it's kind of like just a hobby, I guess. Like I don't really know how to explain it, because back in the day I ran like 6 different websites at one point, and they were all like mini fan sites, and I was just like, it's just fun to do coding and graphics and like keep up with things. And then once
You
it's
should
on
have gotten paid. Can I just say something? If you didn't get paid for that, I'm mad at you, because you need to get paid for your work. You're giving these people free work. They make enough money. They should have paid you. Okay, go on. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's funny because that is like, I wasn't part of this, but I researched this. There was the TV series Firefly. That's definitely one of those that has like a cult fandom, that, and I don't mean cult in a bad way there, just like, as you know, this media property is a cult favorite. And then when they were going to release a movie of the series, they were super active with promoting it, the fandom, super active. But the movie didn't do that well because it's you know, it has an intense fandom, but it's not very wide reaching. So the studio was like, well, we didn't make enough money, so we're sending invoices to the fans for using our material. Basically, like they were sending cease and desist letters and being like, you have used this promotional image, like you can't do that. So the fans got together and were like, well, here's your invoice for all the labor we did. like we spent, you know, thousands of hours on this to promote your property. And they were just like, no, we're not paying anything.
Well, you wrote something, I believe. I hope to get through at least a few of your articles, but
oh my god, yeah, so I've watched a few of your videos, and you're always so prepared and smart, and I was like, well, maybe I'm gonna be ambushed here. I don't know.
No, you're not. I will never ambush anybody ever. I just find this interesting because of what you said about the Star Trek cancellation, and then we move on to Cagney and Lacey, and it does seem that these few people are focusing their attention to make it seem like there's a lot more of them than there are. Yes. So I can see from a studio's perspective why they would. I don't know how much the Firefly movie costs. I'm going to say what, 20 mil?
Yeah,
3 mil? Yeah. I don't know. And then plus marketing. And so they're in for a lot. What year did it come out?
2005, I think, or 2006.
Okay, 2005, 2006. Okay, so I'm not there was a big mix-up in the film industry, and there has been over the past 20 years. So the film industry, I wish I were more into it, but they're making less and less movies, and they're spending more and more on the movies, and they need to have a return, or else someone gets fired, even though it's like, come on, whoever the CEO was going to make the same amount of money, you know, knock it off. You don't need to blame people. But then it's like, okay, end of the year, we lost this, someone's head's on a chopping block. And so you had this small group of fans who puff themselves up. You know how animals do that, where they're like, we're actually this big, you know, they're really this big, but they're like, we're actually this big. And then I can see how some executive at whatever company got super mad about that and was like, how dare you? I thought there were 100 million of you. And there's like 20 with like different accounts. That's funny to me.
Basically. Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, come on, you guys. But I do think that they're targeting, and we see this a lot. I mean, in one direction, we see it a lot with K-pop. I'm talking to someone who is very knowledgeable in K-pop, because that is like an entire different universe for me. I'm like, that requires too much research. I can't get into it. So she's like my in. And she sees a lot of this stuff too. Like, fans in Korea know that they can't game their charts because they already know about what the fans do, but they can game Billboard. They know how to game Billboard charts. So they can get, you know, they can help to get Butter #1 and all of that kind of stuff, right? And people will buy. Like, I don't think I can explain, because, and this isn't me. I don't do this. So I have a hard time understanding first how these people afford it, but also why. But they'll go and buy out a store like of CDs. They'll be like, I'll buy all 50 so that it's sold out. But these 50 CDs aren't going to 50 people. Like, it's just a numbers game, right? And they do streaming parties, you know, to hit milestones where fans will have on like the entire discography playing for like, you know, 100 hours, just to make it count.
And there used to be fans back in the day, but it used to be like, and I remember like with my babysitter when I was super, super little, and they would, you know, early 90s do a bunch of stuff to their hair and have the Guns N' Roses playing. But it was one record that they were playing amongst themselves. So it was hard to game, you know? It was just these girls who were just playing their record. And
and you wouldn't think about what is this doing in the charts, and that was never a thing for me. And once I got into the Fandom music, like My Chemical Romance, I actually like legitimately love all of their music now. So it's not I'm not pretending anything at this point, but I wasn't paying attention to charts, you know. I have no idea what their numbers were. I have no idea. I know what tours they were on because I was following the tours. I assume, I mean, I could guess which songs were their biggest ones based on like what was heard most, but I don't really like know anything like that. And it doesn't matter to me. So it was weird to enter a group where they were like, no, this is the most important thing of all time. We have to get these numbers. We have to get this. I feel like it's a wet dream for capitalism, basically, stans are, because they just want to see that recognition. I think because it's one of the few ways that I don't like to use the word empowered because this isn't empowerment, but I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, we did this as a group. We have, like, you know, we're capable. But it's all just like, it doesn't actually.
The companies are tricking you to do the dirty work for them and making you think that it was out of your own free will. We just did a video on free will, and you need
it's
to know
a tricky one.
Not you, but the fans think that they're doing this because they want to, but it's someone is planting a suggestion, someone is manipulating the narrative from behind the scenes. And why? I get why the companies are doing it. They want to get paid. This girl you're talking about who drove you out of One Direction, I need to know her motivation. She is like the perfect villain character, you know what I mean? I'm fascinated by all of this. I'm sorry if it comes off as being a little bit, you know, insensitive, but I'm like, what kind of a person does this?
I don't think it's insensitive at all. Part of what I was struggling with, like, as I can't even get words out, was that it was like, who is even going to want to hear about this? Because I always feel like fandom is very insular, and it's not like you would read necessarily, like, oh, let's see what the Star Trek fans are up to today. So I was always like, well, who's going to care about this? But the more I researched, the more I was like, wow, there is really so much interplay between industry and the fandom that I just have to keep looking at it. So I'm just glad whenever people are interested in it at all.
It's a microcosm of the larger world, though, because these games are played. Beauty and the Beast. Remember Beauty and the Beast, the animated Disney?
Yes.
Gascon's followers, you couldn't say anything bad about Gascon. You know what I mean? And the captain of the football team, if someone accuses him of anything, even if they know full well he's a rapist, raped their sister, they'll be like, he never did it. He scores these touchdowns. Like,
and they believe that he didn't do it because he would never do it. They know he would never do it. And if they know it, how can he be wrong?
Until he starts losing games. You watch him lose some games. Now he's the worst thing in the world.
Yes. It's that thing where, and I think this is what happened with this one person is very much, and it's not just them at all. It is that cultic devotion where every single thing has to be the way you believe it, and if it isn't, then you jump to another cult that is showing it differently. Basically, like, you just jump to a different set of beliefs that can still work.
Are these people, they don't want to live in reality, they reject reality as it is, or do they feel that they can make their own reality?
I think they feel like they're the ones that know what reality is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're interpreting reality for the rest of us.
Yes.
Okay.
They're the ones who really know what's going on. Like, they really know this person. All of this stuff is just PR nonsense, you know? And this is also, I think this is partially the internet's doing, is that we learn about these things, and now we start, well, we don't necessarily start seeing them everywhere, but suddenly you have things that you can be like, oh, hold on, these magazines print fake quotes. Oh, maybe the interview I don't like was also posting fake quotes, you know? So it becomes very like, and like with One Direction, one of the things we know for sure is that they were not the only ones accessing their Twitter accounts. And we know that because of mistakes that were made. Like, there was a lot of mistakes where it's like, this guy is for some reason replying to the girlfriend's friend being like, hey, hi, sweetie, gonna see you for pancakes tomorrow. And it's like, no, that's not him. That's definitely not him. It's like, deleted, oh my God. Or they'll post things that was supposed to be on the official account, and then it comes like, you know, all of those things. So if someone tweets something and they don't like it, that's management. Yeah. I think, and part of the problem, I think, with One Direction especially is a lot of so Harry has like two types of fans, I think. He has the fans that are like, he is such an arrogant asshole and I love it. And then you have the people that are like, he would never be that way. I love the real him. I see the real him. So you have these two completely separate ideas, but they are so dedicated to it. And I think they basically want to be proven right, which is never going to happen.
I mean, they'll find it. They'll find the proof in there if they are looking for it.
Yeah. It's
which we all do for people we like and for people we don't like. People we don't like, they can't do anything right.
Yeah.
And people we like, you know, there's nothing they can do wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw this in the fandom because, so as I was saying that a bunch of us were exiled, when we started piling up, because a bunch of us were like, what is happening? Suddenly things are changing. You guys are saying things that we said we would never say. What's going on? So a bunch of us were kicked out. And once there was like 5 or something, they were like, oh no, we need a name for them. We need a name to call them because they're evil.
You're heretics. You're heretics. That's what heretics are.
Yeah.
If someone had never bothered with One Direction, they wouldn't have a problem with you. But because you bothered with One Direction and said, I disagree, now you're a heretic. Heretics are persecuted the most. Mm-hmm. And you get a group of heretics together. Now you got the Cathars. Now you got the Gnostics or whatever. Now it becomes violent, and now we can identify you to then attack you. You're not just a person who disagrees.
Yes, exactly. So they had, so they found a word, and now you can still hear it. You can still see it, and they'll use it. I mean, it's like Karen. I knew that this would happen with Karen as soon as it came out, where I'm like, okay, everyone is now being like, it's so good that we have a word for this behavior. And I was like, yeah, but in 2 months' time, you're just going to call any annoying woman Karen. And that's what people are doing. Like,
everybody's a Karen.
Yeah. So I'm like, it has lost all meaning now. So I knew that, like, okay, so they started calling us this, and then I'm like, whatever, it's gonna start ballooning out. So if they see someone who says, like, not even a disagreement, but they word something wrong, because that's another thing. You can analyze the way that someone writes it. They'll be like, this is actually super guilt trippy or passive aggressive, and you're like, I'm just writing.
Passive
like,
aggressive.
What's happening? I'm just writing something. But they'll be like, oh, sounds like you're being one of those, and that's like a warning shot. Like, if you keep doing that, we're gonna cut you out too, basically. So you're sort of on a tightrope.
Who are these people? Like, do you see them outside of the internet? Could you identify one of them? Like, what's their demographic?
Some of them, I lived with one, which, and this is also how I know that it was really fucked up, is that when I was having doubts, I was like, I can't tell her. What if she, like, comes at me, basically. You know, what if she decides that I'm like an evil person because I'm having these doubts? But it wasn't like that. We were both having doubts that we both were like, what is happening? I feel like things are going in a different direction right now. But, and I've seen, yeah, so I haven't hung out with a lot of people because it's been, you know, pandemic, and there were no concerts for like a while. But I met, okay, yeah, so I went to, because of the timing, I've been to 2 Niall Horan shows, and that's it. And one of the shows was like a free performance for what our MTV up here, which is like Much Music. So they had like an award show. And my friend and I went, and we're like, okay, well, let's see it. Like, we like Niall. We're not like in love with him, but we'll see him perform. Like, we got to support. And we started talking to this girl that was in front of us, and she's like, oh my God, I'm here for Niall too. And we're like, oh, this is so fun. Let's have a little chat. And then she just started dropping all of this information where I'm like, first of all, why are you sharing this with us? Second of all, why would you tell anyone this? Because she was starting to be like, oh yeah, I saw them there, and then I went to London and saw them, and then once I went to LA when they were there, and I stayed in the same hotel as them, and I managed to go find a pillow that he touched, and I still have it at home. And then we went and saw them in New York and then Alberta, and I'm like, okay, first of all, how much money do you have? I'm like,
is she going into debt for this?
I'm
sure people would, but
I think her family must have had money because of other clues. But I was like, what? And then she got tickets for Niall, but then her birthday present was actually like a VIP ticket to Niall. It was like, you know, $600 more. And she was the one who dropped like, oh yeah, and if you talk to the scalpers, you can even get meet and greet because they know the people working inside. Like, the scalpers are friends with the people inside, basically. So they can like hustle people in. And I'm like, wait, they know about this? And yeah, a lot of promoters will give their tickets to scalpers to make more money.
That's smart.
It is. And it's smart. Also like, I feel like I'm the one, this is going to make me sound very self-important, but I feel like I'm just like, you know, in my little corner being like, everyone should know about this. But they don't want people to know about that. Like, they want to complain about scalpers. They want to complain about the way that the ticket prices are going up. And it's like, you don't want people to know that you actually set aside. Yeah.
And I'm like, the prices up. They got to get the prices up no matter what. They're not going to have a problem if anyone gets those prices up.
Oh yeah, exactly. They're launching. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That is so deviant. I didn't think they were gonna do that, but they did it. Mm-hmm. They're doing it actively.
They've done it since back in the day, and the reason is because they're like, we don't get enough of a cut from the shows, basically. Sometimes it's the managers doing it as well. And I was listening, and I was like, oh my God, you guys are just talking about this openly. And like, no one is paying attention. Because I was listening to industry podcasts, and they would have on promoters. And yeah, this one guy was like, yeah, we have to get scalping under control, but like, we don't want to get rid of it. Like, you know, those guys are cool. Like, we still get some use from them. Come on, like, let's not go overboard. We still need scalpers. And I'm like, are you actually just like Mr. Ticketmaster? You're just like, yeah, we need scalpers.
Look, nobody seems to care. You're telling everybody, but they don't care. People, ultimately, people just want to see the shows.
Yes.
They'll ignore information that doesn't help them see the show.
Yeah. And I think really they are going, they don't care if people go into debt. I think they're fine with that. Because another thing that they've said is like, the ticket prices are too low. It should always be as high as it is on the secondary market. So they want it to be as expensive as what the scalpers are taking, like, to begin with. But if someone buys a ticket from a scalper, they're probably already stretching themselves thin, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how, you just want to ruin these people? Like, what are you talking about? They can't afford this.
I don't know. Honestly, what you're telling me makes me think that these people are morally bankrupt, more so than I had already suspected they were, which is like, wow, you shocked me. Like, and I do this research all the time. So for you to shock me on this, I'm like, I'm looking at these people on the daily, probably face to face. I'm like, oh, you're a normal human being. You just want to get your project out there. It's like, no, you're missing a little something of your soul. I mean, and I know this town does it to you, or any big city, the rents are so high and so competitive, but nevertheless, like, if you give up your soul, what do you have?
Yeah. It's very strange. And I mean, it's a cruel business. And, I started to get like really depressed the more like music industry research I did, because I was like, wow, there's like not really anything that can be done. So I don't have any solutions. I'm just like consciousness raising, I guess. But
yeah, raise consciousness. People don't need to be spending $600 a ticket. They need to put that away for their kids' college or for their mortgage or something. Like, people need this money.
yeah.
And it's also not
and you
fair.
can be a fan without spending, like, that's the thing, is like, you don't have to do all these things. But it's become like, you know, sold as something that is part of being a fan. And they'll play the double-edged where if you get angry, so what happens is people get emotionally invested, they spend all their time, like, you don't sleep because there's always something happening, and you might wake up and like, I woke up like a few times and there was something new and I was like, holy shit, I missed it. And you're like, oh my God, it doesn't mean anything. Like, okay, so you see it 6 hours later, that's fine. It has nothing to do with you anyway, but you feel that like pressure, like you don't want to miss it.
Well, that's like the news. People who are addicted to the news. I missed it. Well, are you on the Security Council? Why did you have to get the news as it comes out, you know?
Yeah.
But people, they have this emotional investment. Maybe it is a lack of religion.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is a lack of self-discipline generally.
Yeah.
But, you know, they get caught up in these worlds, these information worlds, these online community worlds, and they're stuck in it until they get out, and then they're like, what was I doing for 2020?
Yeah.
Like, the whole year?
Oh, that's the thing too, is that there was a big fan surge over the pandemic, of course. But yeah, so you get so emotionally invested that if things happen that you don't like, or, you know, maybe you get really invested in one of the couples, I don't know, and, you know, they're all young. So of course, like, oh no, they broke up. And then you're like actually upset about it because you've spent so much time. And then you might vent and be like, oh, I'm so upset. Like, oh, I thought they were going to get married. Like, they made me believe in love. That's always a thing. Like, oh, look at these people that are in love, supposedly. They make me believe in love. But then you'll get the fans telling you, like, they don't owe you anything. If you are having problems, you need to log off. Like, stop pretending like they owe you stuff. They don't owe you anything. So it's like this weird thing of like, you do feel like they owe you something. But as soon as someone expresses something where, oh, you actually do expect something, then they'll be like, stop being difficult, like, get out.
Well, I mean, they don't. When you were talking about this, where is it? The Don't Kill Your Gays. There's the writers, the Don't Kill Your Gays, the concept is that, can you explain the concept of Don't Kill Your Gays? I keep bringing it up.
Yeah, so Don't Kill Your Gays, I guess, is like a trope name for, it's gotten a lot better now, but in the past, if there were gay characters, they would always get killed, basically. And it was so reliable. And back in the day when they would have one-off episodes, I think I remember like Ally McBeal would do this, like, oh, here's a client who's having such a hard time, and you're like, oh my God, they have this connection. Oh my God, he died of an overdose because he was gay and he was, you know, homeless. Oh my God. So they'll do things like that, right? There's no like, oh, they're just a regular person that's like living their life. There has to be a dramatic tinge to it, right? There has to be that that like, I don't know, they just like killing them. I guess because it's dramatic, right? And Joss Whedon, who did Buffy, which is one of the examples I listed, always loves to make his character suffer. Like, that is one of his trademarks, is I just want to watch them suffer. So like, of course, he's going to put them through the worst things. So it's fully it's fully predictable that something like that would have happened, but they were taking it quite personally. Yeah.
Yeah. I would just want to say real quick, the reason why the new gay character might have gotten killed off in the 90s is because they didn't have a gay character as the regular.
Yeah.
And so for episodic TV, you bring someone in and then you're like, okay, we'll develop this character and then we'll kill him off because the next episode has to be fresh. Yeah. So I feel that the writers in the 90s for Ally McBeal or something like that may have thought they were doing a good thing, and really what they were doing was bringing in this new unique character and then killing them off, and people at home thought, well, why can't they be regulars?
Yeah.
Well, because the structure of the season didn't account for that.
There's so much of that too, right? There's like, why aren't these characters saying much? It's like, well, because they have a particular contract where they can only say 3 lines, or else they have to be, part of this, I was going to say agency, but that's not what I'm thinking. Like ACTRA or AFTRA or whatever, right? There's like
industry stuff. It's nothing personal. And this is what is so fascinating, that the fans take it so personal. It's like, it's nothing personal. They
don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you had written in this section how Joss Whedon Buffy fans had pleaded with him not to kill off this character.
Yeah.
And he kind of said, oh, I'm not going to kill off this character. No spoilers or anything. But then he did. And I'm like, well, of course he did. You can't tell the writer not to do something unless you don't feel it's art. Do you not feel that what you're looking at is art? Or do you feel it's like companionship and not art? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I think it might have shifted towards companionship, because this is something you can tell on Tumblr as well. And old fans have been sort of saying like, what is happening in fandom, because people are starting to not be able to deal with nuance in any way. Like, this character did a bad thing, therefore this character is the most evil thing ever. Why would you put him in a fanfic? Like, you're evil because you wrote this person. It's like, wait, what's going on? This is this is the show Hannibal. Like, they're all kind of not, like, they all have issues. I'm just exploring the issues. It's okay.
It's conflict.
Yes, exactly.
Conflict.
Yeah, it's like conflict, and people have different writing styles. Like, my problem has always been that I'll be like, I'm never gonna write that, and then I'll be like, but how would it work? They're being like, oh wait, I have an idea now. Whereas others will be like, yeah, they want to write hurt comfort, because that's a genre where it's like you make them hurt, but then they get comforted, and that can be like reassuring for people who've experienced stuff like that, right? They can put in their own personal, like, oh, it was a car accident, or it was whatever thing. But some people who read them, if they're not familiar with genres of that kind, which is what it seems like there's a lot of new fans that don't understand, kind of like how fandom works. And they'll be very upset that something happened like that in the fic. And people are very upset with Archive of Our Own is an archive for fan fiction that is volunteer run. It's fan run, so it's completely volunteer. It's nonprofit, and it is also it doesn't remove anything unless it breaks laws. So there's all sorts of things, right? There's fics where people get killed. There are rape fics. I mean, there's warnings. Like, you label it like, this is a dark story. You can put like, graphic violence or whatever. You can warn people. You can warn people about every single thing you put in there. But people will be like, this shouldn't exist. It needs to be deleted. And people are like, that's not how that site works.
That's not how art works. You can't delete Lolita.
But they want to, and they think it's really bad that the site isn't doing it. So maybe it's actually an evil grooming site with predators. And it's like, you can just like not click into it. Like, I mean, look, don't read. That's the old adage. Like, don't read. Scroll past.
And yeah, there's going to be predators in this world. There absolutely are. But I don't know if there's any more on this site than anywhere else. And art, usually they're less likely to be predators because they're writing about it. They're expressing it in a positive way. I think is positive through a story. rather than going out and doing something or not being able to deal with their emotions and then, acting
Yeah.
out.
And it's also very like, you'll have like, the Mary Sue fix, which is where you sort of have like a made up character that's kind of your representation, and it's a perfect character, and they fall in love and it's amazing, and people don't like reading those because why would you want to read that? But those can be like an essential step for people to sort of get into writing and sort of get into better stuff. You'll usually be pretty young. Like I think I wrote that when I was like 14. I was like, and then now, no, that would just be boring. I want to do more advanced stuff.
What do you write now?
Well, right now I'm just doing like all of this research, but I've written stuff. I've written like First World War stuff so I was researching nursing and how the troops were actually in Egypt and they took over the hotels, and the hotels were hospitals and stuff like that. Written like bodyguard stories, just like a lot of different stuff. Yeah.
It's interesting. So I'm going to let you go in 2 minutes because I have had you on here for more than an hour. I just want to let you know the only fandom that I follow because I can understand. Are you familiar with Yuzuru Hanyu fandom?
No.
Hanyu, they call him a god of the ice. He's a Japanese figure skater. He's kind of an anime character, but in real life. And he can skate. It's like butter watching.
Did he win stuff at the last?
He did not win
Olympics?
The last Olympics. No. Nathan Chen, who's our guy, American guy, won the last Olympic, but he won the previous 2 Olympics. And the fans of Hanyu and the fans of Chen, I'm like, I like Nathan Chen because he's our guy. He's an American. He's an American champion. I've seen him skate. I'm the home team, but they're coming at Nathan so hard for the littlest things he said.
Oh yeah. No, it is. They've created people in their heads that are not real because no one can live up to the standards. That's also why I feel like it's kind of religious, because the expectations that they have are basically like, it's what you would expect from, an idol that isn't actually real, because real people are not constantly, PC. They're not constantly like, what was one of the things? It was like, oh, Niall had a birthday and he had a cake that was like, a woman's body in a bikini. And I was like, that's in poor taste, but okay, he's like 23, so whatever. But a lot of people were like, oh my God, no, he would never do that. He would never be this sexist. Like someone else has to have bought this cake. And it's like, that it's just a cake. And it's just like, you don't have to go into it as if, it means something.
How was the cake? Was it good cake? Because that's what matters more than if she was in a bikini.
I know. I didn't get to try it, unfortunately. So
if you didn't get to try that cake, you should not be giving this man any of your time, except to buy the CD. That's my rule. Now, if he's sharing his cake with you, okay, now I'll put the fandom effort in, because you're basically like his cousin at that point.
I love that you say that, just because Louis' tour has been going on now since it was postponed since forever. But there was one day he just came out with cupcakes for the fans. He was like, anyone want a cupcake? And the fans were just like, oh, what? We'll just take photos, but no, we're not going to take them. And I'm like, eat
the cupcake. Why
aren't you taking the cupcakes? Free cupcakes. That's amazing. But yeah, sometimes they'll share, things. But yeah.
Well, you're supposed to share things with other human beings. That's normal. When you put this phone in between us, this is when it becomes abnormal, and all these weird relationships form, but they're layered relationships and a lot of delusion in there too. And there's supposed to be like a little delusion, like you're supposed to be delusional about your crush or whatever. No one talked bad about my crush, but at least that person, they've smiled at you. This I feel is the internet is getting a little bit ahead of us right now. And we're sort of trying to play catch up with emotions and so forth. And we're just not emotionally equipped to deal with this just yet. A lot of people are not.
No. And I mean, that's, I guess, like, if anyone was ever, so I call my experience cultic. If anyone was ever like, why would you call it that? Because like nothing happened to you, then I would just go into all of my really awful emotional reactions to things where I was like aware as it was happening that this is not normal. Like, you know, if you have like like a panic attack or something and you're just like, I should not be reacting this way, but I am. And I had that with like multiple things where I'm like, I know that it's not okay, but I guess I've gotten so invested in this that the fact that it is not happening is like depressing. But we believe a lot of crazy things.
One last question. Your roommate who is obsessed with this, did this get in the way of her personal life? Did it keep her from establishing a relationship? Did it keep her from talking to her parents? Did this take away from her schoolwork? Anything at all that hurt her in the real world?
No, but she was also one of those closeted fans. So no one at work knew. She would often be like, oh, they were talking about this. And I was like, I have no idea what this is about. Huh, what? Oh yeah, Brittany's on Instagram. Like she would just like completely fake it. So she managed to avoid it in that way. Relationships, it definitely stopped me from going out and meeting people. I was too busy. I was online all the time. Like,
you only have so many hours in a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Monia, where can people find you?
Well, I have my Substack, which is Exiled Fan, and it's all just fandom stuff, my research into marketing and how it, you know, interacts with fandom. And I have a Twitter, which is Momovolution.
Yes, I follow you on Twitter. Excuse me, my voice is going. Anyway, thank you so much. I will put all of that in the bottom.
Yeah.